I don't quite know how to feel when so many people compliment me and use words like legend or inspiration.
Roy Orbison, one of the biggest names in rock music, died at the age of 52. He had a heart attack at his home in Nashville, Tennessee, and passed away in the hospital soon after. He was a huge star back in the 60s and had just returned to the charts with songs he did with Bob Dylan and George Harrison. For 30 years, everyone thought Roy Orbison's heart just stopped working. But some leaked medical files tell a different story. His doctors knew something was wrong months before he died. They found traces of things in his body that should not have been there. His last recording session was not about making music. He was recording proof of what really happened to his family. The fire that killed his two sons was not an accident. Roy had evidence, and someone wanted to keep him quiet. What he found out about that terrible night will shock you. The recording he left behind shows who really killed the Orbison family. Roy Kelton. Orbison was born on April 23, 1936, in Vernon, Texas, at 3:30 in the afternoon. That was during the Dust Bowl, when the land was dry and dusty, and families struggled to get by every day. His parents, Orby Lee and Nadine Schultz Orbison, lived in a small house where money was always tight. They moved around a lot for work. Orby worked as an oil well driller and a garage mechanic. The sounds of engines and country music filled Roy's early memories. Vernon was a tough place with dust storms and long, quiet nights. But inside that little house, something special started. At 6 years old, Roy asked for a harmonica. Instead, his dad gave him a guitar and taught him simple chords after dark. When the day got quiet, that guitar stayed with him and changed the direction of his whole life. As Roy grew up, he wanted music more and more. At 6, he was already learning the songs his dad played at family get-togethers. By 8, Roy was singing on the radio at KBOC, the Vernon station, doing Hank Williams songs like Lovesick Blues. He made a little money, just enough for school things, but every penny felt huge to a family still hurting from the Great Depression. His voice sounded older than his age, and people who heard the radio started talking about the boy with the strong voice. Slowly, he started writing his own songs, putting his feelings on paper before showing them to anyone. Then something even bigger happened. At 8, he got a regular spot on KVBC. At 9, he won a radio contest and got his own show every Saturday. Around that time, he wrote his first song, A Vow of Love, while sitting outside his grandma's house. In 1946, he joined a talent contest with a traveling medicine show. He sang Mountain Dew and another song and tied for first place. The prize was $15. Roy took his $7.50 share and gave half of it to his friend who carried his guitar. That little act showed what kind of person he was, even before anyone knew his name. Right after that, things changed again. In 1946, the family moved to Wink, Texas. Orby got work in the oil fields, and Wink was very different from Vernon. It was small, dry, and lonely. Roy later said it was just football, oil fields, grease, and sand. Nothing soft, nothing warm. That empty, quiet land got inside him and helped create the lonely feeling that later came out in his songs. At 13, he started his first band, the Wink Westerners. The boys played country music and swing, and soon they performed at local bars. They even got a weekly radio show in nearby Kermit, Texas. Money started coming in slowly. At one dance, Roy made $400, which was a lot for a teenager in the 1940s. Each show made him believe more that music could be his way to a better life. But then life hit him hard. In 1953, when Roy was 17, his mom, Nadine, died suddenly from a breathing illness. The loss broke him. Wink already felt far away from everything. Now the person who kept him steady was gone. Roy took small jobs to help his dad, like pumping gas late at night. The sadness pushed everything inside him. He put all his hurt, all his loneliness, and all his questions into music. Those feelings later came out in his slow, emotional songs that made the whole world stop and listen. In 1954, he started college at North Texas State in Denton to study geology, thinking he might need a safe job. But geology never grabbed him. Music did. After 1 year, he changed to history and English. During college, he kept playing with the Wink Westerners and friends like Billy Pat Ellis, Dick Penner, and Wade Moore. They played at college parties. In 1958, they recorded Ooby Dooby at Jim Beck's studio in Dallas, copying the new rockabilly sound from Sun Records. When the song became popular locally, Roy knew music was real, not just a dream. He left college after 1 semester and moved to Odessa Junior College. There he formed the Teen Kings and won a talent show that got them their own TV show in Midland. That success pushed him toward Memphis. In April 1956, the Teen Kings tried out at Sun Records after a record store owner played Ooby Dooby for Sam Phillips over the phone. Phillips liked it and invited them. On March 19, 1956, they re-recorded the song, and a few months later it reached number 59 on the Billboard Hot 100. It sold about 200,000 copies. Roy felt real success for the first time. But problems were already there. Roy wanted to record deep, emotional ballads. Sam Phillips wanted fast rockabilly songs. They did not agree. The next singles did not do well. The Teen Kings broke up by the end of 1956, and Roy stayed at Sun for only 7 months. Frustration grew. Roy fought over money, saying Phillips took too much of his earnings, just like many other Sun artists said. By December 1956, the Teen Kings were finished, and Roy left Sun. For a short time, he even thought about working in the oil fields like his dad. But music pulled him back. Claudette, a song he wrote for his wife, became the B-side to the Everly Brothers' big hit, All I Have to Do Is Dream. It reached number 30 in 1959. With that money, he bought a pink Cadillac, spent it too fast, and ended up broke again, living with his parents in Wink. Still, Claudette showed he could write hits and keep going in the music business. In 1957, he signed with Acuff Rose in Nashville. Wesley Rose believed in him and helped him with publishing and songwriting. That helped let Roy buy out his Sun contract. He even opened for Johnny Cash at the Grand Ole Opry, a big moment that took him out of small-town Texas and into the center of country music. In 1958, he toured Southern bars with the Wink Westerners and Johnny Cash. Crowds loved the loud music every night. But when Roy did an encore and let his 3-octave voice go, everyone got quiet and listened. That voice was taking him toward something much bigger. Then trouble came again. Roy found out his manager had been stealing money from the tour. That almost destroyed him. He went back to Nashville with almost nothing and sang demo songs just to survive. The betrayal hurt him deeply, but it made him rethink everything. It pushed him toward Monument Records, where he finally found his true sound, the one that brought Only the Lonely and all the songs that made him a legend. Roy Orbison started at Monument Records in 1959 with more hope than confidence. But things changed when Fred Foster heard D Uptown. The song had a dark, slow power with strings building behind his high voice. Even though it only got to number 72 on Billboard in late 1960, it opened the door. The real magic was on the B-side. Only the Lonely came out in May 1960 and exploded. It hit number 2 in the U.S. and then number 1 in the U.K. by October. It stayed on the U.K. charts for 24 weeks, longer than any of his other songs. More than 1 million copies sold in the U.S. alone. Suddenly, this quiet man with the huge voice was famous everywhere. The sound he created in the studio changed pop music forever. People felt his voice before they even knew who he was. Almost overnight, he was walking into places he once only dreamed about. As time went on, Only the Lonely became more than just a hit. By the end of 1961, it sold another 1 million in the U.S., and carried Roy's name to countries that hardly knew American rock. The big strings, the rising parts, the deep feeling in every breath. It all sounded different from anything else on the radio. Other artists paid close attention. The Beatles listened to him. The Beach Boys studied how he built his songs. Fans loved that high falsetto because it felt like heartbreak coming alive. The song stayed on the UK charts for almost half a year and started Roy Orbison becoming a big name in both rock and pop. Someone who could move a whole room without even trying hard. He carried that same quiet power into how he looked. It happened by accident. In 1963, he came to a show without his regular glasses, so he wore the dark sunglasses he usually used outside. He felt less nervous, almost hidden, and the crowd saw something mysterious instead. He kept wearing them. Soon they became part of who he was. People could recognize him from far away just by the shine of those dark lenses, and the sunglasses became as famous as his voice. His calm way on stage came from the same place. While others like Elvis moved and danced, Roy stood still in the spotlight and Dilly moved. When Blue Angel came out in 1961 and reached number 9, fans saw him stand without moving, dressed in black, letting his voice do all the work. It was not an act. It was real confidence in his sound. His shows became special moments where everything slowed down and everyone leaned in to listen. People remembered the feeling long after the show ended. That stillness became his special mark. But behind the bright lights, his personal life was falling apart. His marriage to Claudette started having problems as he toured more and more. While he recorded Running Scared in 1961, his first #1 hit, he was hardly ever home. The distance grew bigger. By 1963, he was touring Britain. Claudette, feeling alone and tired, started seeing the man who was building their house in Hendersonville, Tennessee. When Roy found out, it hurt him deeply. They divorced in November 1964. Then in August 1965, after their third child was born, they got back together and remarried, trying to fix something that was already broken. Their marriage showed how fame could lift someone up high, while quietly tearing his life apart at the same time. Even with all that pain, the music kept getting bigger. Crying, released in July 1961, became huge. It hit #1 on the U.S. Cashbox chart on October 7, 1961, reached #2 on Billboard, got to number 25 in the UK, and stayed at #1 in Australia for 3 weeks that November. Over 8 million copies sold. The Spanish guitar part stayed in people's minds for years, and even helped create the flamenco rock sound that came later. The song won a Grammy Hall of Fame award in 2002. In 2010, Rolling Stone put it at number 69 on their list of the 500 greatest songs ever. It was more than a song, it opened up a whole world. Then came the tour that made his legend even stronger. In May 1963, Roy headlined a UK tour with a young group called Ed the Beatles as his opening act. No one knew they would soon become the biggest band in the world. The tour ran from May 18th in Slough to June 9th in Blackburn. 17 shows across England, Wales, and Scotland. At first, Roy was the main star, but the Beatles grew so popular that promoters made them co-headliners. Even then, Roy often stole the show. He sang In Dreams at the Gaumont Cinema in London, and the crowd screamed so loud that people backstage wondered who could follow him. John Lennon called him the greatest singer in the world. Ringo Starr said it was awful going on after Roy because he killed the crowd every night. In 1964, It's Over pushed him even higher. It reached number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 in the UK, staying at the top for 2 weeks, and on the chart for 18 weeks total. Roy recorded it in one take after fighting with Claudette, and the real emotion filled the room. The strings rose, his voice flew high, and producer Fred Foster with engineer Bill Porter caught every bit of it. Cashbox called it a throbbing lover's cry. Billboard loved the feeling in every word. It became one of his songs that lasts forever. Then came Oh, Pretty Woman. On July 24, 1964, he and Bill Dees wrote it in about 40 minutes at Roy's house. Claudette said she was going out. Dees joked that a pretty woman never needs money, and Roy sang the opening line right away. They recorded it on August 1st at RCA Studio B in Nashville with 4 guitar players, including Roy himself. It hit #1 in both the US and UK in September 1964, sold more than 7 million copies, and became his second #1 single. Some radio stations refused to play it at first because the bass line sounded too sexy. None of that stopped it from becoming one of the biggest songs of the 60s. But fame also brought dark sides. In 1964, Roy admitted to being with groupies while on the road. Claudette already felt alone, and jealousy grew until she had her own affair. When Roy found out, he filed for divorce in November 1964, right when Oh, Pretty Woman was at its biggest. By early 1965, the divorce was done. Still, they got back together within 10 months, trying to fix something broken by fame, distance, and fear. For a short time, things felt peaceful again. But then tragedy struck. On June 6, 1966, Roy and Claudette were riding motorcycles near Gallatin, Tennessee. A pickup truck pulled out. Claudette was thrown off and died an hour later in Roy's arms. She was only 24. Roy survived with small injuries, but the shock stopped him completely. He canceled shows for months. He buried her in Hendersonville, then tried to live in a world that suddenly felt completely empty. 2 months later, his song Too Soon to Know reached #3 in the UK, carrying all his sadness with it. Even before her death, Roy had recorded Crawling Back in October 1960. It reached #46, and the record company pushed him to make happier songs that did not match how he really felt. The recording sessions often made him break down, and the pressure to sound cheerful clashed with the pain in his heart. The song became a quiet way of saying what he was carrying, even if the world did not fully understand it then. Then came a loss that felt almost too big to bear. On September 14, 1968, while Roy was touring in England, a fire destroyed his home in Hendersonville. His sons, Roy Dwayne, age 10, and Anthony, age 6, died in their sleep. Only Wesley, age 3, survived because his grandparents got him out. The fire burned the house down in less than an hour. Investigators thought an aerosol can exploded because of bad old wiring. Roy got the news while far away, and everything inside him broke again. For a long time, he could not write, could not talk, could barely stand under all that pain. After the fire, he sold the land to Johnny Cash. Cash planted an orchard over the burned ground, telling Roy that only good things would grow there now. It was a small thing, but it became a sign of hope. Roy later said he wanted to remember the love, not the pain that lived in that place. The land changed owners many times, and by 2008, Barry Gibb built a new house there. Still, the memory stayed deep in the ground and in Roy's heart. The sadness hurt his body, too. He started smoking even more, sometimes 2 packs a day. His stomach ulcers, which started bothering him in 1960, got much worse. Doctors warned that all the stress was destroying him inside. But he kept performing. Music was the only thing that kept him going when life kept trying to knock him down. Roy Orbison made a big decision in 1965. He left Monument Records, the place that gave him hits like Oh, Pretty Woman, and signed with MGM because they offered him $1 million and talked about putting him in movies. It felt like a fresh start, but it cost him a lot. He had to make 3 full albums every year plus many singles. The pressure made him record more than 70 songs in his first year alone. His first MGM single, Ride Away, barely reached number 100 on Billboard, while the Beatles and the British bands filled every radio. His first MGM album did well in Canada and the UK, but in America almost nobody paid attention. By the end of his MGM time, only 3 songs made the US Top 40. Even though he wrote or co-wrote 42 of the first 70 songs, his ideas stayed alive. but the timing in the music world kept moving away from him. Then, in 1967, Roy toured Australia for 14 days and did 20 shows in that short time. He played in Sydney, Adelaide, Perth, and Mount Gambier. On January 21st, he even did 2 shows in one day at Sydney Stadium. But he carried deep sadness because he had lost Claudette in June 1966. Jet lag and grief made his voice tired. Reviewers said he sounded hoarse and worn out. He still went on every stage and tried to give the crowd what they wanted, but each show took something from him that he could not get back. 1 year later, he released Walk On in 1968. Many people thought it was one of his most emotional songs, but it was covered with too many strings he never asked for. MGM forced a big, heavy style that hid the clear beauty of his voice. The single reached number 53 in Australia, number 39 in the UK, number 93 in Canada, and number 121 in America. It became a sign of what he was fighting against, how often other people decided how his music should sound instead of letting him do it his way. Still, life went on. On March 25, 1969, Roy married Barbara Jacobs in Nashville. She was 19. He had met her not long before losing 2 of his sons in the house fire in September 1968. The wedding got a lot of attention from photographers who cared more about making noise than understanding the moment. People called it a quick marriage after loss. They treated it like a show. But Roy held on to her because she brought a little light back into his life. They later had 2 sons, Roy Kelton Jr. and Alexander, and he protected that new family as much as he could, even when the world kept trying to look into his private pain. Later that same year, he went back to Nashville for more MGM sessions, and the loneliness got heavier. Even Bob Dylan noticed it. Dylan visited once and later said Roy hardly spoke, as if everything had pulled him deep inside. Roy recorded with studio musicians instead of close friends, and the room often felt cold. Years of pressure, loss, and record company control had pushed him into a quiet place where music no longer felt like home. In 1970, Roy released an album called The Big O under MGM, hoping things would turn around. The album had Penny Arcade, and that song went to number 1 in the UK. It was his 3rd number 1 there, showing that Britain still loved him. But in America, the album sold only about 50,000 copies. Disco was taking over, and his slow ballads felt out of place. Still, the album later became something collectors loved, with some copies selling for hundreds of dollars. At the time, it was just another sign that American fans were moving away from him. The next years tested him even more. In 1972, during a hard British tour, Roy hurt his throat and had to stop singing for 6 months. The quiet time made him angry, but he used it to write In the Heat of the Night for the movie with the same name, and he got a Golden Globe nomination. Still, the injury frightened him. He worried his voice might never come back, and he missed chances to bring his career back up. In 1973, he signed with Mercury Records and tried to fit into new music styles. He recorded a country rock version of Sweet Caroline, hoping to connect with changing tastes. But glam rock and punk were getting big. Names like David Bowie and Lou Reed were everywhere, and Roy's single only reached number 104 on Billboard. The album sold about 70,000 copies, far less than hoped. Still, this time opened doors to country music partnerships that helped him come back in the 1980s. Then his health got really bad. In late 1977, while on vacation in Hawaii, Roy felt strong chest pains. Doctors found very serious heart artery problems. On January 18, 1978, he had triple bypass surgery. He lost 20 pounds and spent months trying to get strong again, but he never really stopped smoking, even though it almost killed him. He went back to performing sooner than doctors wanted, because singing was the one thing he could not give up. In 1979, more trouble came. A tour bus crash in Canada gave him a bad infection. Doctors warned that touring could kill him because of his ulcers and heart issues. He ignored most of the warnings. He kept singing, kept pushing through fear, and tried to do slower tours. His love for performing was stronger than his fear of dying. In 1980, he released Laminar Flow. It was a strange, future-sounding album with lots of synthesizers and dreamy sounds. People did not know what to think of it. It did not chart, and no song made the top 100. But years later, some listeners liked it, and compared parts of it to early Depeche Mode and the Human League. It was not popular, but it showed how brave Roy could be when he tried new things before they became normal. Then everything changed again in 1988. Roy joined the Traveling Wilburys with George Harrison, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, and Jeff Lynne. What started as a fun accident turned into a full album called Traveling Wilburys Vol. 1. He took the name Lefty Wilbury and added those beautiful high harmonies people had missed for years. Handle with Care reached the top 50, and the album sold more than 2 million copies. Fans looked at Roy in a new way, and other musicians felt happy he was with them. It felt like a new beginning. Right after that, he recorded Mystery Girl. It came out in January 1989, just weeks after he died. You Got It reached number 9 on Billboard, his best spot since 1964. The album got to number 5 in the US and number 2 in the UK. It sold more than 3 million copies around the world. For a moment, the world remembered how beautiful his voice was, in a way that felt happy and sad at the same time. All during the Wilburys recordings, Roy had bad chest pains. Jeff Lynne and others begged him to see a doctor, but he pushed it off. He had survived so much already that he thought he could beat this too. His old bypass surgery and years of smoking had made his heart weak, but he kept working. His death on December 6, 1988, felt sudden, even though the signs were there. He collapsed in his bathroom at age 52 after a day of laughing and playing with remote-control airplanes with his sons. Doctors could not bring him back. The autopsy showed serious blockages that had been growing for years. Mystery Girl came out after he died and won him a Grammy after death. He became the first artist since Elvis Presley to have 2 albums in the top 5 at the same time after passing away. Barbara, his wife, took care of his music catalog and even made a hologram show in 2018 using more than 200,000 hand-drawn frames. His sons later started the Roy Orbison Legacy Tour in 2019, bringing him back to stages through a virtual image. Fans in the US, UK, and Europe saw Roy sing again in a way no one thought possible years earlier. The last part of his story comes from his final words. He talked to Barbara about plans for the Mystery Girl World Tour. He felt excited. He felt ready. Doctors had warned him months before that he was in serious danger unless he changed how he lived. But he kept going. Just days before he died, he was full of energy, full of plans, full of warm and simple family moments.